Can you hear me okay? Hello? Yes, hello? Yes. Nobody sang the next verse. It's great to be here with you tonight in Ballyclare. Thank you very much to the people who organised this. It's difficult in any circumstance to get people to come out. Today there's been a great turnout of people lining up, people who come to listen to the speakers, but the reality is we all know the issues, we all know what's been done upon us and what's been done upon our community. I've been coming to Ballyclare for protest rallies, I think, for just over 10 years now. Back in 2012 in the flag protest, and after that escapade I ended up in jail, so hopefully tonight we'll get home safely and I'll not end up sharing a cell with Ben Habib. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim looks jealous. I think Jim wants to double up. Maybe need to go back to the bar to get us out. The protocol was the greatest constitutional injustice ever inflicted upon the United Kingdom. No sovereign country anywhere in the world would partition its own borders to placate a foreign power. Nowhere else in the world. Go to America and tell them divide your country because somebody else says so. Go to America and say Vladimir Putin says divide your country. What do you think the Americans would say? What would even the weakest American like Joe Biden say? Not a chance. Not a chance. But here in Northern Ireland, we have a border down the middle of our own country. And why? Based upon the threats of IRA violence, IRA terrorism, and absolutely reject and condemn all acts of violence and troubles. This week is Loyalist bombs in the 70s, disgraceful, totally wrong. Leo Varadkar went to the European Union and waved about pictures of IRA bombs for political leverage. Could you imagine if any unionist went to the European Union or anywhere else, waved about pictures of UDA or UVF bombs and said, if we don't get our way, this is what will happen? Does anybody think that would be tolerated for a second? Not for a second. But when it's Leo Varadkar, it's no problem. And lectured we were through the process by the SDLP. The SDLP, the great and the good. Claire Hanna, who purports to lecture us for having peaceful protests, threatened civil disobedience at a very minimum. And Claire never quite explained what the maximum was. So just over 100 days ago, we had the surrendering the Union document, when Jeffrey Donaldson and his poodles around him told lies, and no other word will do. The DUP, Jeffrey Donaldson, Gavin Robinson, everybody else who endorsed that deal told lies. And let's be very honest about how and why that happened, because the British government offered all sorts of sweeties to the DUP to get them back. Gregory Campbell got an award. Mr. Seismic became Mr. Speaker. That's all it took for his principles. Some other people got a paycheck to chair some committees in the... Just think of it. Imagine selling out your own country to chair a committee in the Northern Ireland Assembly. I mean, for goodness sake. And then we had people who had ministerial office, ministerial cars. And as Kate said, if they'd been honest about it, if they'd said, look, we're giving up and we're going back, I could have lived with that. Wouldn't have agreed with it, wouldn't have supported it, but at least it's honest. But don't tell people lies. Don't tell people black is white. And they laughed at us. And we, the four of us, commissioned legal opinion. So as it wasn't just our views, the foremost constitutional law expert in the United Kingdom, in my view, John Larkin, the former Attorney General, gave a legal opinion which supported our legal analysis. What did Sir Jeffrey Donaldson say? Uck. That's what he said. He waved away the opinion of John Larkin, and hopefully he'll not need him to defend him anytime soon. So that was the approach that was adopted. Unfortunately, Kate and Ben weren't there. Myself and Jim done the press conference at Stormont, and they mocked us, and they derided us, and they laughed at us. And then on the Saturday, when Stormont came back, when in they went, the enthroned Sinn Féin IRA, who did the DUP turn their fire on? The Army Council sitting in the stands? Gerry Adams? Danny Morrison? No, Jim Allister. That's who the DUP attacked. a dead-end unionist. He said, well, I am delighted to be here tonight in Ballyaclare with fellow dead-end unionists. So let's talk briefly and quickly now about what Solemnity in the Union, the Donaldson deal, and it is his fingerprints are all over it. What the Donaldson deal said and what the Donaldson deal does. The Irish Sea border is gone. Fascinating that 192 million is being spent on building border posts on a border which doesn't exist. Countless dozens, hundreds of staff. I don't know, they must be confused because the man on a sea border which doesn't exist. And what did they tell you? Zero checks, zero, not, none, zero checks and zero customs paperwork. There's more checks now than there was this time last year. Nothing has changed. And then we've seen Gavin Robinson, who tried to tiptoe back, as Jim calls him, Big Gav, trying to subtly tiptoe back. So now, Gavin said the Irish Sea border, well, firstly, he said on BBC Talkback, and I mean, you're never going to get a difficult time in BBC Talkback if you're a protocol unionist, but in any event, Gavin's first approach is, what is the Irish Sea border? What is it? So after they tried to redefine it, he then said, well, okay, it's not gone, but it might be gone maybe in the autumn. So we've gone from the Irish Sea border's gone to it's going, gone. I mean, come on ahead, Gavin. Like, do you really think we're all stupid? You know, are you stupid people? No. Are you buttoned up the back? No. Then don't listen to what they say. And then the most egregious thing of all, restore Article 6 of the Acts of Union, and this was the best one of all. So Jeff Lee Donaldson and Julian Smith, absolute chancer, come up with this clever idea. I know what we'll say. We'll say we'll not restore the Acts of Union because if we put them back to 1801, there'll be tariffs on Bushmills whiskey. You go over to the bar there, and if the protocol goes, you'll be paying for your whiskey tonight. Honest to goodness, that's the level that the DUP ended up at. But of course, all that changed 100 years ago. So what they then said was, we're not going to restore the Acts of Union. We're going to change the Acts of Union, recast it, and say how great this is, even though that it doesn't apply. But my favourite moment in the Donaldson deal was when Jeff Lee stood up and he said, you know, addressing us, no doubt, how foolish are these people? They say they want to restore the Acts of Union. How foolish are they? And Heaton Harris and Steve Baker, the hard man of Brexit, went from a hard man to a snowman overnight. And Julian Smith cheering Sir Jeff Lee on. Then somebody happened to go and look on YouTube at the 1st of July 2021. What did Jeff Lee Donaldson say? We must restore the Acts of Union. Jeff Lee forgot his own position, which is hardly surprising. And then they said, we've cut the pipeline of EU law. Somebody ought to tell the High Court, because down the pipeline which has been cut, not only comes EU law, but comes EU law which slays and beheads in public daylight an act of the sovereign parliament. And that's the EU law which has been cut. And I don't know, maybe this week in the newsletter we'll have Gavin Robinson ghostwriting an article for the great David Brooks, that constitutional law expert. I mean, but one of my favourite thing, my next favourite thing in the Donaldson Deal campaign was when David Brooks tried to take on Jim Allister with a legal analysis. You can imagine how that ended up. And they tell us we've got a Stormont brake. Honest to goodness, it's like giving a child in the back of a car, one of the toy ones you get out of Smith's. You know, you can pull that and the child's pulling the brake. It's not actually doing anything. The Stormont brake does absolutely nothing. So, just finally, ladies and gentlemen, as to how we move forward, I want to see unionist unity. I want to see all unionists working together. I want to see a maximisation of the unionist vote. Of course we do. We all do. But the basis of that unity was a joint unionist pledge between the DUP, the TUV, the PUP, and the Orange Order signed up to that. And the rest of us endorsed that and stood on platforms. We haven't changed. We are saying the same things we always did. So the people who've divided unionism are the people who've told lies. And now, and here's a message to Gavin Robinson, or anybody in the DUP who talk about the upcoming elections. If you want to come before the unionist community, put on sackcloth and ashes and beg for forgiveness for what you've done, then we'll see what happens. But if you don't, you will bear the consequences of your own actions. And nobody can blame anybody for that. The position was clear. The position has always been clear. Nobody ran against DUP candidates in 2019 whenever they purportedly stood firm on the protocol. But it's not enough to try and tiptoe back. It's not enough for clever language. They need to come and beg forgiveness for the lies that they've told. And in the absence of that, I'm sorry, but there's no easy way out for them. Because just like a man who puts on a dress does not become a woman, a protocol implementer who calls themselves a unionist does not become a protocol opponent. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, this week in the High Court, and I'll not bore you with legal analysis, but the High Court of Northern Ireland determined that so supreme is EU law, we now have an immigration border down the middle of our own country. Immigrants can come to Northern Ireland and can't be sent to Rwanda or anywhere else. But the rest of the United Kingdom is different. We are divided in terms of immigration policy, in terms of legacy, and even this week, in recent days, we've seen the so-called EncroChat drugs case. Even that is going down on the basis of the protocol. So when the DUP said, you know, the protocol only applies to trade, I don't think they declared it was drugs trade as well. But in any event, ladies and gentlemen, the impact of that judgment is seismic. And what I say to the UK government is this: it's time to grow a backbone. And any of the immigrants that come to Northern Ireland, in my view, there's only one way to deal with them. Put them on an Ulster bus, send them to Dublin, and give them a note saying, courtesy of the protocol. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.